epic imagination, Destro. We possess the ultimate weapon of control. People trust television. It's their friend. They believe what television tells them about the news, the weather, or G.I. Joe. Don't you see? We control the creation of truth.
Just how rich and powerful is Lord Evelyn Rothschild? Historically, the Rothschild family wealth was hidden in underground vaults. The Rothschilds' secret financial records were never audited and never accounted for. Their family-commissioned biographies give the illusion that their family fortune has dwindled, but researchers estimate their wealth at close to $500 trillion, more than half the wealth of the entire world. Besides their many castles, palace mansions, wineries, racehorses, and exotic resorts, the Rothschilds bought Reuters in the 1800s. Reuters then bought the Associated Press, which selects and delivers the same news stories to the entire world, day after day. They have controlling interest in 3 major television networks and easily avoid media attention since they own it. Until recently, they owned and operated England's Royal Mint and continue to be the gold agent for the Bank of England, which they also direct. They control the LBMA, London Bullion Market Association, where 30 to 42 million ounces of gold worth over $11 billion are traded daily. The Rothschilds earn millions weekly just on transaction fees alone. They also fix the world price of gold on a daily basis and profit from its ups and downs. Over the centuries, the Rothschilds have amassed trillions of dollars worth of gold bullion in their subterranean vaults and have cornered the world's gold supply. They own controlling interest in the world's largest oil company, Royal Dutch Shell. They operate phony charities and offshore banking services where the wealth of the black nobility and the Vatican is hidden in secret accounts at Rothschild Swiss banks, trusts, and holding companies. Although Evelyn Rothschild looks like a harmless gray-haired old man, make no mistake about it, Rothschild and his ancestors have handpicked presidents, crashed stock markets, bankrupted nations, orchestrated wars, and sponsored the mass murder and impoverishment of millions. The wealth hoarded by this one family alone could feed, clothe, and shelter every human being on Earth.
Propaganda is as American as apple pie. Propaganda at its most sophisticated was perfected, and I mean not just political propaganda, but commercial propaganda. Both kinds of propaganda were perfected jointly by the United States and Britain. You know, in Mein Kampf, in his famous chapter on war propaganda, talks about how deeply he admired what a brilliant job the British propagandists had done in World War I, had nothing but contempt for the German propaganda, and resolved to make sure that his own and the Nazi Party's propaganda would be brilliant in imitation of the British, you see? So, how many people does the world of propaganda employ in the United States, if you think about it? There are countless euphemisms that we use today for propaganda, right? If you go up to a person in an ad agency or a PR specialist and say, well, how's the propaganda going? They're going to be insulted. They're going to feel like you've called them a dirty name. They don't understand that they do propaganda, right? They do propaganda. And the rise of all those euphemisms for it is a direct result of the successful effort to cast propaganda as something that they do in those closed societies. The Russians do it, the Chinese do it, the Iranians do it, the Venezuelans do it, the Cubans do it. We don't do it. We educate people. We provide them with information. And that misrepresentation of propaganda has had the paradoxical effect of making it extraordinarily effective. See, because propaganda works best when you don't see it.
Enslave your child, your wife, your mother. There isn't anything that you ever had. There isn't anything that you own. There isn't any right that you possess that they're not planning on taking away. Sheeple. Your sheeple. And your children are going to be slaughtered if you go along with the program. It's time to wake the town and tell the sheeple We are being led like sheep to the slaughter. What is the purpose? A new world order. The United States of America is controlled by this evilarchy. They control the money system. They control the State Department. They control the presidency.
So they have a plan to give us a new age world global occultic religion. They're going to have been deceived so greatly that they'll actually think it's something good. In fact, the whole New Age movement, the New World Order crowd is telling people that the 666 mark of the beast is the most elite thing that could ever happen to them.
No cash. Cashless society. It's ready to go. Disease could be created. In essence, this is what he was saying.
We have new strains of virtually everything that's drug resistant or drug.
I'm not worried about the old diseases. I'm worried about the ones that they create to bring down the population of the world. They simply want to exterminate them, but that they consider them to be useless eaters.
Words are very important to the Illuminati. These things are manufactured purposely for a purpose. And so I'm saying that there is something organized and directed, and it's here in this country.
Future shocker, biochip. And this is what Anthony showed you earlier, a biochip. That's an injectable computer chip, an economic mark in the back of our right hands or in our foreheads.
You've got a choice. You can join in this fight, or you can die as a slave.
So when you get a book that's banned, that means there's something in there that you need to know. So this book is called History of Central Banking. What does Hitler, JFK, Lincoln, Gaddafi, Napoleon, Julius Caesar, Tsar Nicholas II have in common? They all tried to do state banking and they all got either killed or thrown into a war.
This is where it gets frightening.
Well, it's tied up with depopulation, right? You have this being sort of the new path of eugenics. And so, I don't think these people ultimately care about, how many people are left, right?
Smart and right.
Well, eugenics people like to act like eugenics disappeared, and it hasn't. It's just rebranded. And if you look at the history, it's very clear and it's very disconcerting.
That's why everything you're seeing that is coming out of policy all over the world, all of the World Economic Forum seems so Malthusian.
Look at Canada, the medically assisted death. Originally, it was going to be for terminally ill people. Now people are pitching it to homeless people in Canada, saying, "You're too poor to live. Do you want to kill yourself?"
How do we not remember what happened last time?
Well, I think some of these people, you look at the Rockefellers, they funded what happened last time. There's sort of these mergers, because there's many of them, of Silicon Valley companies and big pharma. They're framing it as healthcare, but it's eugenics being framed as healthcare. And it's really
terrifying.
It's terrifying. It's crazy. There's a lot of words for it, but, ultimately it has to be stopped. And unfortunately, COVID has set this precedent where it can be mandatory, or where you can lose your livelihood, where you can, not be able to travel. You can basically be placed under house arrest unless you agree to it.
If you don't, in the grand scheme of where we've all been upgraded, we're all part of the internet.
Upgraded.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the intention. That's how they're selling it to people. If you look at this, for example, the British Eugenics Society, where a lot of this came from, you look at someone like H.G. Wells, best known as a science fiction writer, but also a avowed eugenicist. He predicted that in 100 to 200 years, there would be two human races. There would be the upgraded, augmented elite who were intellectual and attractive and, were the ones that did everything. And then a dwarf-like, troll-like, squat underclass that eats bugs. And, for people that have been paying attention, it seems like, they're selling this as one way. It's all going to be a utopian thing if we all upgrade. That's how it's being framed, right? But if you look at how these people think, they don't want that. They're looking at feudalism and how do you create a class of slaves that cannot even cognitively rebel ever again.
The final goal is to eradicate humanity as we know it. Once you understand the final destination, it becomes much easier to look back and identify the psychological conditioning, the biological tampering, the cultural grooming, and the educational prepping that we have been subjected to for decades in preparation to making us accept a post-human future. It takes a lot of physical and psychological abuse to get an intelligent species like ours to agree to its own extinction. Most, if not all, that has transcended in the last 60 years was designed to get us closer to accepting such a dystopian reality. Whether you care to accept it or not, we live in a hyper-controlled matrix where our perception of reality is meticulously planned, managed, and executed in order to control and steer us in whichever direction they wish. And the direction is a post-human world. For this, they first needed to destabilize, dehumanize, and demoralize humanity through every means possible. The destruction of the nuclear family, children being indoctrinated by the state, abortion, the eradication of God and spirituality from education, life in megacities and away from nature, toxic food, air and water, social media, replacing real human connection and interaction, engineered financial crisis and taxation, endless wars and massive migration, stress, anxiety, depression, drugs and alcohol, constant fear-mongering, moral relativism as the new religion, and I could go on and on about how humanity has been influenced and forced to move away from all the things that give us strength, security, purpose, and meaning. A weak, immoral, disconnected, ignorant, and unhealthy population is an easy target for the next stage, the creation of an entire generation of androgynous
We need
people.
all the protection that we can get. That's why the vaccines are so effective.
This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
We've got to get them vaccinated, and hopefully they will do it willingly.
I think we really need to make it clear that there are privileges associated with being an American.
We have to be more blunt, we have to be more forceful.
If you do not want to get vaccinated, you can work from home. You can homeschool your children. You can shop online. So where is this coming from? People saying, I'm now being forced to be vaccinated.
If you want to travel, you better go get that vaccine.
You should be wearing masks even when you are vaccinated if you are indoors.
If you wish to have these privileges, you need to get vaccinated.
We have to say something coming out, you know, you don't get vaccinated, you know you're going to die. I mean, let's just be really blunt to these people.
Get vaccinated.
I want to add also a comment to what Tina said about the change in personality, depression, and all these things. This is very real. And we have identified the reasons from the theory, and some doctors in Italy have, some pathologists have confirmed that. The spike protein, unfortunately, attacks and destroys also the endocrine system. So the glands producing hormones, and hormones are what make our emotions and feelings and all those things. And so an Italian pathologist near Venice, he went on a newspaper telling that all the brains he had investigated, he found the pineal gland completely destroyed on all the people who were vaccinated. Okay, so the spike protein is also very dangerous for the endocrine system. That's why people have these changes in personality and
It's an epidemic of psychiatry. You eat too much, it's a disease, it's an addiction. You smoke too much, it's a disease. You are too unhappy, it's a disease. You're too thin, it's a disease. You're too fat, it's a disease. You have too little sex, it's a disease. You have too much sex, it's a disease. No free will, it's all chemicals. No self-discipline, no self-control. The chemical imbalance meshes very well with the idea that you give a drug which restores the balance. It's a story, a mythology, a fable. The child doesn't perform the way he should or behaves he should. He is not responsible. Some chemicalist will give him a chemical. You hear day in and day out on television that this is a mental illness and that's a mental illness. And Zoloft is advertised. Beer you can't advertise, but Zoloft you can advertise. Now it's not just psychiatry. It's the whole psychiatrization of the culture. Now what's more toxic, Zoloft or beer? Amen. Case closed. Psychiatrists are getting more and further and further and further away from this human-to-human touch. And they're becoming more and more quacks. They talk and act and impersonate doctors. They talk about diagnoses and treatments and the brain and all this kind of stuff about which they know nothing. Zero. It's not science. It's politics and economics. That's what psychiatry is. Politics and economics. Behavior control. It is not science. It is not medicine.
Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you that the anti-vaxxers appear to be right. Somebody who did not get vaccinated, got a little Omicron, or maybe even a worse one, but recovered. Now you've got natural immunity, and you have no vaccination in you. Can we all agree that that was the winning path? The smartest, happiest people are the ones who didn't get the vaccination and are still alive. I want to make sure that I'm not leaving any wiggle room for myself. Have I? Have I said as clearly as possible they're the happy ones right now? And have a reason to be, completely. Right. Having said as clearly as possible that the anti-vax people seem to be the winners, I want you to hear that clearly. The anti-vax people appear to be the winners. The anti-vaxxers clearly are the winners at this point, and I think it'll probably stay that way. And I don't want to put any shade on that whatsoever. They came out the best. They have the winning position. The unvaccinated have a current advantage because they feel better. The thing they're not worrying about is what I have to worry about, which is, I wonder if that vaccination 5 years from now, because really the anti-vaxxers, I think, were really just distrustful of big companies and big government. That's never wrong. It's never wrong to distrust government. It's never wrong to distrust big companies, right? So if you just took the position, let's just distrust everything the government did, well, you won. You won. You won completely. I did not end up in the right place. Agree? You would all agree with that, right? I did not end up in the right place. The right place would be natural immunity, no vaccination. You should take victory, and I should take defeat. We can agree on that, right? That my position is now the weakest, and your position has gone from the weakest to the strongest, and that we can just say that's true. The people who didn't get vaxxed are absolutely in the winning position.
I think our society is in the midst of a vast change. The society that began at the Renaissance now is ending in the fact that psychotherapy has grown with such great zest. Almost every other person in California is a psychotherapist. And this always happens when an age is dying. You see, the Greeks began their great age, and then they talked of beauty and goodness and truth, all these great things that the philosophers talked about.
Yes.
Now, our Renaissance began the modern age. And at the beginning of an age, there are no psychotherapists. This is taken care of by religion and by art and by beauty, by music. But at the end of an age, every age down through history has been the same. Every other person becomes a therapist because there are no ways of ministering to people in need. And they form long lines to the psychotherapist's office. I think it's a sign of the decadence of our age, rather than a sign of our great intelligence.
The first sign an empire is failing is when its people question the institutions the empire was built on, the structure of government, the churches, the schools. They reject God because the emperors begin believing they are God. And the people become so rich, everyone believes they are an emperor as well. And too good to do the jobs that built the empire in the first place. So they outsource those jobs. And they open their borders to allow people desperate to do all the other jobs the other people are too rich to do. Then comes the guilt for all this wealth. But still, the empire thrives. And now everyone questions their wealth. Then they question themselves. And then they reject everything that built the empire to begin with. They destroy their own symbols, attack themselves like a cancer, attack the people who protect the empire, attack you for protecting it. Then the wolves come. And all the people who lived like emperors will know the suffering they blamed themselves for creating. And they will be slaughtered. And the new empire will rise from its ashes. And then the cycle begins again.
They said it's just a conspiracy, but open your eyes. Mass migration isn't random, it's strategic, funded, engineered. Behind the scenes, global NGOs, elite foundations, they call it humanitarian aid, but it's a chessboard move. The goal? Cultural dilution, destabilization, a new population that votes, obeys, conforms. In 2001, the UN called it replacement migration. A quiet war, no bombs, no armies, just demographics. You think it's about compassion? No. It's about control. They're not replacing you, they're replacing freedom. Gen unfold, decoding what they hide in plain sight.
They don't need a gun to kill you. They just raise the price of bread. It used to take 5 years of work to buy a house. Now it costs your youth, your sanity, your marriage, 30 years of stress for a box with walls. You trade your time, your life, for paper. Then they print more paper and your time becomes worthless. And you didn't notice the theft because it wasn't loud, it didn't break your door, it broke your future. They stole your dream and sold it back to you with interest. This isn't economics, it's murder in slow motion. Inflation isn't a number, it's the erosion of your one and only life. They're not printing money, they're printing your death certificate.
Targeting small businesses now in greater numbers than they ever have before.
What are they doing?
So like on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s podcast, the first time I was on there, I told him about a group called Champions Group. I talked about it on InfoWars today too. On Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s podcast, I told him they're acquiring large swaths of an entire industry. Champions Group is HVAC. And in the Southwest, they've bought up like 85 HVAC small businesses. But they didn't just buy them. They didn't just buy it. They paid for the name, image, likeness of the former owners so that they could keep looking like they were a small business.
Yeah.
Then they installed unified software across all of the thousands of trucks. And so no matter who you call to come look at your frozen air conditioning or condensation line, they're each going to quote you a 3 times higher price than they ever did before. And they're going to say, oh, I mean, you don't have to trust me. Call these other guys. And everyone comes out and they're all charging you more money. All of a sudden, then they say, wait for it. They say, don't worry, you can't afford this. I know it's 3 times as much as it used to be, you know, COVID, inflation, greedflation, whatever. They're going to say, don't worry, we'll finance it for you. And they'll hand you an iPad like this. And they'll say, just sign right here. They're not going to hand you a truth in lending statement like they're required to by law. They're going to hand you this iPad. And you're going to squiggle it and you're 85 years old and it says $100 a month. And you're like, oh, I can't afford it, but I'll try. And then on your first missed payment, they're going to exercise what was in there that was a lien on your house, and they're going to take your house from you. It's so hard to understand how hard it is to even find out what a small business is anymore.
Shouldn't I let my government know that I think they're crazy? I think they are insane, really. This is an insane thing we're doing tonight.
So many people get it wrong. You have to understand that there's a definite difference between the country and the government. You see, the people in this country aren't fighting a Vietnam War. The government's fighting it.
Well, the government is the people, supposedly, but in this instance it is not.
Anymore, it's not.
No, I agree with you. It is not in this situation.
We read a headline in 1969, taxes go up 13%. Expect 20% raise in 1970, and we all sit back and accept it. It's been printed in advance.
Well, would you agree with me in saying that the only people who benefit, who can gain anything because of our tax laws, are the very wealthy or the very poor who don't have anything, so they don't pay any taxes. And we support the country, and yet we have the least to say about it.
Corporate America gets all the benefits of American stability and fiscal policy, but bears none of the responsibility. Walmart, they make billions in profits. Their workers are one of the largest corporate users of social service programs. Why don't Walmart workers share in the profits of Walmart?
In a capitalist system, companies have a right to distribute profits to their shareholders.
Mm-hmm. This is the insidious part, I think, of when we talk about that we have a free market system. Because what it makes it seem like is that the natural order of things is that Walmart makes billions in profits and can distribute it to its shareholders, and that's just how it goes. But we know that we, the taxpayers, are subsidizing their workforce with food stamps. They're getting the benefit of our tax dollars.
If you just understand, like, take logic, first of all, right? If you believe in logic, you would understand that it is a force that transcends government. Like, in other words, we couldn't have an election on the laws of logic. It wouldn't matter what a governor said or what a president said or what a Supreme Court justice said. Like if they were to be like, okay, we're holding a referendum on the law of non-contradiction, and 2/3 of the people say that's not a law anymore, you'd be like, yeah, it still is. It doesn't matter. Like it's just logic is a different force, and morality is the same thing. Like something is either right or wrong, and it doesn't. The law can't change that. Like slavery was the law of the land, but that doesn't mean slavery was moral. That just means that there were some powerful men who decided to codify slavery in law. And so, like, once you accept that, you recognize that a moral or immoral action, the moral characteristics of an action do not change whether they're done by government or a gang or an individual or a group of people. If Walmart does something or the Senate does something, that action is either justified or it's not. And once you accept that, you recognize that, like, okay, well, if anybody else did the things that the government does, we would immediately recognize them as the criminals that they are. You could call it taxation, but you're just threatening somebody and taking their money. You can call it collateral damage, but that's murder in the first degree if anybody else does it. And so essentially the worldview is that nobody is above the moral plane. Like none of these things, there's no such thing. Government doesn't really exist. It's a social construct. I know that term has gotten a bad rap over the years because people have been calling biological realities social constructs.
But this is actually
some things
applicable
really
here.
are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, some things really are social. There's no such thing as the government. It's something that we human beings create. And it's something that we, it's like there's buildings and there's people and there's men with guns, but there's not senator any more than there's really a slave or a slave master. These are terms that human beings came up with, and they're either morally right or they're morally wrong. And so once you look at things through that lens and you hold governments to the same standards that you hold everybody else to, you inevitably come to the conclusion that the government should have radically less power than it does.
We're talking about having a huge increase in productivity, so there's going to be more goods and services for everybody, so everybody ought to be better off. But actually it's going to be the other way around, and it's because we live in a capitalist society. And so what's going to happen is this huge increase in productivity is going to make much more money for the big companies and the rich, and it's going to increase the gap between the rich and the people who lose their jobs. And as soon as you increase that gap, you get fertile ground for fascism. And so it's very scary that we may be at a point where we're just making things worse and worse. And it's crazy because we're doing something that should help everybody. And obviously it will help in healthcare, it'll help in education. But if the profits just go to the rich, that's going to make society worse.
The final thing that we're going to have to watch out for, and we saw this with social media after the fact, is the relationships kids are going to build with these systems. We are now giving kids access to an infinite, never-ending opportunity to engage with an imaginary friend, something that is always on, can answer all of their questions. That is a recipe for a new type of addiction. And we have to really be looking out for this. We kind of missed the boat on smartphones, and now we're all trying to get them back out of the classrooms. We can see this line of sight directly with AI systems and chatbots. And this isn't, of course, all on educators. This has to come to, tech companies, how we design these systems, age gating them. But something to look out for is this kind of new addiction that might form between kids and chatbots. And that is not going to end up well. And do our best to bring parents on board with that. So even if that's at parent-teacher interviews, just casually saying, look out for the amount of time your kid spends chatting with a chatbot. I noticed they were a little bit more disengaged in class. That could be where. So this is another area that we have to apply foresight to, but we can see that line of sight happening quite clearly if we don't intervene.
Economics is a form of brain damage. Economics is so fundamentally disconnected from the real world. It is destructive. If you take an introductory course in economics, the professor in the first lecture will show a slide of the economy. And it looks very impressive, raw materials, extraction, process, manufacture, wholesale, retail, with arrows going back and forth. And they try to impress you because they think, they know damn well, economics is not a science, but they're trying to fool us into thinking that it's a real science. It's not. Economics is a set of values that they then try to use mathematical equations and all that stuff and pretend that it's a science. But if you ask the economist, in that equation, where do you put the ozone layer? Where do you put the deep underground aquifers of fossil water? Where do you put topsoil or biodiversity? Their answer is, oh, those are externalities. Well, then you might as well be on Mars. That economy is not based in anything like the real world. It's life, the web of life that filters water in the hydrologic cycle. It's microorganisms in the soil that create the soil that we can grow our food in. Nature performs all kinds of services. Insects fertilize all of the flowering plants. These services are vital to the health of the planet. Economists call these externalities. That's nuts.
The global rate of absolute poverty, which is defined imperfectly as living on less than $1.90 a day, was 84%. That's enormous. Today, the World Bank puts that number at 9%. Over the same period, life expectancy went from less than 30 years to 72, and there were similarly remarkable gains in access to food, water, housing, education during that period. That period coincides so neatly with the rise of global capitalism that I flatly refuse to believe it's a coincidence. 200 years ago.
Intellectuals have a great tendency to see poverty as a great moral problem to which they have the solution. The human race began in poverty, so there's no mysterious explanation as to why some people are poor. The question is, why have some people gotten prosperous? And in particular, why have some gotten prosperous to a greater degree than others? Everybody started poor, so poverty is not a mystery to be solved by intellectuals. Intellectuals have no interest in what creates wealth and what inhibits the creation of wealth. They are very concerned about the distribution of it, but they act as if wealth just exists somehow.
85% of the millionaires and billionaires in the world are first generation. 85%.
Oh.
Only 15% is coming from inheritance. So they were asked, how did you achieve such financial success in such a short time? And the answer was that we read books. How many books? 50 books a year. That means one book a week. Now, important thing is, they were asked, what kind of books do you read? They said, we don't read fiction. We don't have time to waste because fiction will remain fiction. They said, we read only self-help books. Why? It says one good idea is worth $1 million. And the question is, how many ideas do we need to succeed in life? All it takes is one. What does it show? There's a connection between learning and earning. Learn more, earn more.
You get up $2.5 million. Any asshole in the world knows what to do. You get a house with a 25-year roof, an indestructible Jap economy shitbox. You put the rest into the system at 3 to 5% to pay your taxes, and that's your base. Get me? That's your fortress of fucking solitude. That puts you for the rest of your life at a level of fuck you. Somebody wants you to do something? Fuck you. Boss pisses you off? Fuck you. Own your house. Have a couple bucks in the bank. Don't drink. That's all I have to say to anybody at any social level. Did your grandfather take risks?
Yes.
I guarantee he did it from a position of fuck you. A wise man's life is based around fuck you. The United States of America is based on fuck you. You're a king? You have an army? Greatest navy in the history of the world? Fuck you, blow me. We'll fuck it up ourselves.
That there's hardly an issue in which you won't find government on both sides. For example, in one of these massive buildings scattered all through this town, filled to the bursting with government employees, some of them are sitting around trying to figure out how to spend our money to discourage us from smoking cigarettes. In another of the massive buildings, maybe far away from the first, some other employees, equally dedicated, equally hardworking, are sitting around figuring out how to spend our money to subsidize farmers to grow more tobacco. Each of these programs spends money taken from our pockets that we could be using to buy goods and services to meet our separate needs. All of these programs use very able, very skilled people who could be doing productive.
All you ever hear about in this country is our differences. It's all they ever talk about. Politicians and the media, always pushing the things that separate us, things that make us different. That's the way the ruling class operates in any society. They divide the rest of the people. They keep the lower and the middle classes fighting with each other so that they, the rich, can run off with all the fucking money. Fairly simple thing. Fairly simple thing. Happens to work. Anything that's different about us, you know that's what they're pushing at you. Racial differences, religious, ethnic, national backgrounds, jobs, income, education, social status, sexuality, anything they can do to keep us fighting with each other so that they can keep going to the bank.
All right, my fellow Americans, welcome back to the show. That is the show. I hope you enjoyed the supercut bonus episode today, Reality, Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics. Part 13, Video Killed the Radio Star. And there are some parts in there where you're only hearing music, and there are things going on words on the screen that you should read. So if you're listening only to this episode, I highly recommend you watch the episode instead, because you are going to miss certain things if you are listening only. And I'd like you to watch it because it's my first all-video supercut bonus episode show. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Go to the website, politicsandpunkrockpodcast.com, buy some merch, check out my music, check out the soundtrack for the show. Take care of each other out there. Hang out to the end of the outro clip where I got Frank Zappa letting you all know. Doesn't matter if you're smart. Doesn't matter if you're stupid. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be just fine. It's all going to work out. For you, for me, for all of us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Good night. We'll see ya next time. This has been a bonus episode of the Politics and Punk Rock Podcast, entitled Reality, Lies, Damned Lies, and Statistics, Part 13. Video Killed the Radio Star. We'll see you next time.
It's okay to be smart. And it's okay to do things intellectually, and it's also okay to do things with a gut reaction, and it's also okay to combine the two. And usually the way the media plays on the fears of the public, it's fashionable to disparage people who are smart. And the bad part about that is a lot of people who were born smart pretend to be dumb so they can have friends. And that's a tragedy, you know. I try and encourage people, if they are intelligent, to not be ashamed of it and go out and do what you're going to do and forget about having friends and acting dumb in order to have friends, because those friends aren't going to do you any good anyway. And if you know deep down in your heart that you are a dumb kind of a person, don't be ashamed of it, you know. That's the way you are. Have a good time. You're dumb. You can sit in front of a television, drink beer, and watch hockey and love it. You have none of the problems of people who know more than you do, because the more you know, the less you like it. So, you know, everybody should be happy with what they got.